Welcome to the Thursday, June 16th, 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Museum Advisory Board meeting. Let's go ahead and take roll call starting to my left. Amira, you want to start?
Amira Shahid, board member. Claire Cragen, board member.
Pete Erslev, board member.
Kermit Shields, board member.
Stacy Turner, staff.
Rod Tarullo, staff.
Jackie Winterbottom, board member.
Craig Middleton, board member. All right, have you guys all looked at the agenda and do you have any questions or changes? Would someone like to make a motion to approve it?
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the agenda is approved. Have you guys reviewed the May 19th meeting minutes, and do you have any questions, revisions, or anything?
There's one minor change under the first page, approval of the May 21, 2022 minutes. It should say I approve the minutes of the April 21, April 21, 22. So that's just the wrong month there.
So do I have to second that? I'd second that motion.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, any other revisions or do we have to vote on that, or? Okay.
Just
Any-
noted in the motion, you want to approve the minutes with that correction.
Okay. Any other revisions? All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes with that adjustment of the May date to April?
I move to approve the minutes with that correction.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
aye.
Okay.
Aye. All right, excellent. All right, there is no public comments tonight, so let's move right into the cultural discussion. And thanks for Kermit for
Yeah.
putting together
I
some.
just put some ideas down, something to start the discussion, I guess, there. So that's a. But yeah, I guess my point was that the questions that they asked were a little abstract,
Yeah.
and so we had to. So maybe we just have to say whatever our talking points are, just squeeze them in there somehow.
For what it's worth, I liked what you put together and agree that they're sort of tough questions to answer, and I appreciated what you put together.
Does anyone else have additional comments or any revisions?
Well, I'm on the Friends of the Walden History Museum board as well, and we did meet with Steve last June 1st. And basically, he seemed very open because we had gotten together to talk about it just as we are now and decided that we would just suggest a different organization for the city as far as, because right now there are multiple advisory boards or staff that are responsible for what could fall under culture and arts, and to maybe group those, and they might be under Parks and Recreation. I mean, there's no recommendation for what to do with that group, but to kind of pull it all together. And Steve seemed very open to that.
And when you say pull it all together, would that be like a new advisory board?
It could be, and it would all depend on what the city wants to do with it. Apparently, Paul Husman and the mayor are a subcommittee that are looking at that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if that happened, we could be the PRA committee instead of the PRAM committee.
I don't know if that would work.
Yeah. I guess the other thing that I think Nathan mentioned, this is the discussion about the whole lodging tax discussion. I mean, how should that be allocated? Should it be really for city organizations like the Golden History Museum, or should it include all the organizations in the city that are not part of the city? I don't know what the right answer is for that. Did you talk about that in the,
Yeah, and basically, it wasn't so much about, it's just how the city as a whole wants to handle arts and culture.
yeah.
I mean-
I gave a kind of board overview update to council a while ago, and, I think this was, I don't know if they brought that up, but that was something like Don's comment was just like, what are you guys doing for the museums? How do we make sure that they get all the love and attention that they need? So, I'm glad that this is kind of addressing that council concern. I don't think you can separate parks. I think parks and open space are cultural amenity, though, too. But they also have their own board, so.
Right, and there wasn't any opinion voiced on where it belongs, just,
Right.
but right now another group is responsible for events, and another group is responsible for public art, and they're all handled differently too.
Clearly, the museum and history park are the big cultural element that the city has responsibility for. So, and that's manifest through the budget, the annual operating expenses that the city puts to the museum, the paid staff, the administrative staff, all of that. I mean, it's a $750,000 annual deal. And public art has administrative representation, but doesn't really have any ongoing regular staff. And special events has a part-time staff person dedicated to it.
Does Public Arts have a advisory board or
They do.
commission?
Yeah, they do have a citizen group, and then there's a committee for special events that's not recognized as a board of commission, but a committee that looks at that. So, and some people have talked a little bit about the Historic Preservation Board somehow being in the mix too. So,
Rod, how are other cities organized in terms of their parks and museums? Do they separate it out typically, or is this pretty common to have it under one?
they're all over the board. It's not uncommon to have museums and even cultural things in parks and recreation, but there's a lot of different models out there. And so I think one size doesn't fit all. It really ends up being what works best for the community that they're in. Size of the organization makes a difference a little bit. If you're talking about, a community of 15,000 or 20,000 versus 100,000, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me, and I think you hit on this, Kermit, in your comments, but at least when it comes to the tax and trying to figure that out, it seems like whether or not there's a vision as to how outside arts entities are treated and part of that vision that aren't necessarily owned by the city and an asset of the city, but yet still have a city cultural element, that to me I think would make it easier to figure out how to break up the tax piece. And so once there's sort of a direction as to what's the engagement level with outside NGOs or Foothills Arts Center, all the other assets that we have but aren't necessarily into the city, makes that question easier.
Yeah, we might not need another advisory board if we could just communicate. Just the way we send a representative to a lot of other committees, if they send a representative to our board, or at least had a contact or something, so we kept the communication lines open, I mean, that could work too.
There could also be blending where you don't have a new board, but you blend existing boards together in some form or fashion. That is a possibility. Or a new board's a possibility, or there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. And to some degree, it depends on really what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of what we are thinking about doing, right? We can't lose sight of whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like we're kept in the loop a lot of the museum stuff, but like, I can't think of the last time we took action on a museum item. It's always been like, okay, that's nice to know what's going on, but as far as like actively kind of steering it with whatever we can do in, like our advisory capacity, I don't know if a board focused separately on that would kind of give them kind of more power and focus to let the community voice kind of lead next steps looking forward. And if it would, you know, that's great. Or maybe we should be doing more of that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a more regular interface with Nathan, too, to sort of help foster that conversation. I mean, I don't know what others think, but I always appreciate it when he is an agenda item on our regular meetings, and just sort of hearing where the museum is going might be a way to be able to provide more substantive input.
Yeah, I asked this last time and didn't really get an answer, but maybe Jackie or Kermit can help with this. Is like, what does Nathan want? Has he come out and said, I think we should, do this, this, and this? Or-
Jackie will answer that.
Nathan is he's in favor of kind of centralizing how the city operates with all of the arts and culture, not just the ones that belong to the city, like the museum does, and see some benefit in that. Because, especially with what's bringing this all up, I'm assuming is the lodging tax and allocation of funds. Because then there would be one group, it would be clear who you went to if you wanted a grant or you wanted a piece of money. It just, right now, there is no clear agency or advisory board or anything that's tasked with culture and arts. And I think it kind of comes down to, do we think that's a good thing or would be a good thing for Golden?
So non-city owned pieces too? So
Oh,
like
as well,
Miners
yeah.
Alley, Astor
exactly.
House.
Yes.
Because like
And
with the history
Foothill
museum
Arts
there.
Center.
Yeah, and those like two things, you have
Yeah.
a cultural district forming too.
Yeah.
So it's not just those three entities, but all the
Right.
space in between to, create that district
Right.
thing. Maybe turning that parking lot into a plaza to support all of them, I don't know. But that could be part of it too.
Right.
And then it becomes like a DDA situation,
What's a DDA situation?
bringing all the, like forming a district and
Oh, okay.
like a cultural type of
Yeah,
thing.
where everything's kind of at one point when the city first looked at buying the Coors building, we had a long process of working with the Foothill Arts Center because it looked like we could both move into that building and create one joint entity. So we visited a couple of other cities to see how they did it and worked a lot with Foothills. And then that whole thing kind of, so now it's all unknown. Are we moving? Are we going to get storage space that the city owns as well? There's just a lot that's up in the air.
Down at the Denver Foundation, which is a philanthropic grant-making organization, they give a lot of credit in their grants to organizations that are partnering with other organizations. Instead of our museums competing for those dollars, it'd be great if we could cooperate and get grants that cover tie them together there.
Yeah, and that were complementary.
Yeah.
What's it take to become a designated arts district?
I'm not sure of exactly what that would.
Because they have separate funding, like Lakewood has their art line area, like Rhino is one, Santa Fe Arts District, and they have, once you establish that, you get access to new funding opportunities. So like with everything kind of being up in the air, it's like a really exciting time to try to ground it in a,
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
like, kind of
Well,
looking
and
forward
that's-
kind of way.
Yeah, we just had a strategic planning meeting, and one of the first, I haven't read the whole thing, but the first thing I read was about having more advocacy for the museum, and just I had a person come into the museum today who said he'd been looking for it for 45 minutes because he kept seeing signs for free museum, but nothing that pointed him to the museum. And I was like, well, that's kind of strange. It's not that big, you know, but it was, you have to kind of, yeah. But there's a lot of different ways to do it.
I guess, Jackie, what's the sense from the Miners Alley Foothills Art Center view in terms of that relationship with the city? And
I have no idea, but they both have their own boards and, you know, they do things totally differently. Like, one of the people is very active as a Friends of Golden History Museum, is very active in Miners Alley as well. And Nathan and Hassan from Foothills, they're good friends. I mean, so there's a lot of connections that are informal. They're just aren't informal ones. I hope this has helped. I talked to Nathan a little bit today about, you know, how much should I share? And he said, well, whatever you think.
And so how does that answer those 4 questions from, that we're supposed to be talking about here?
Well, I think it depends on how you feel about
Yeah.
centralizing, because on the first one,
Yeah.
that's kind of what the centralizing the city's approach.
Does anyone have an opinion on the first one? What role the city should take?
I think everybody probably has some kind of opinion, but it's like, are we telling them, city council, what they should be doing? As opposed to, it's kind of a strange position to be in as a stakeholder.
And we are just a stakeholder, you know, like to seriously answer these questions in any kind of actionable way, we need all the stakeholders.
And to a large extent, that's what Mr. Glick's doing. He is going around and talking to all the different groups, including Friends of the Museum and PRAM and the Art Committee and all of the other nonprofits in town that would fit into the cultural. So he's doing that, and he's getting perspectives from all the different angles and then trying to sort through them to be able to give something to council to consider.
I think it's important for all the stakeholders to hear others too, though, to kind of be like, okay, I hear you saying this, how can we kind of each change our answers to come work together? And, you know, everybody just kind of solely looking through their lens, providing 6 different inputs, and then having Steve bring it all together, you know?
Yeah, it almost seems to me like the entities most affected, I'd love to hear their views and what their ideas are as to moving forward. Like, for example, what does, Foothills or Miners Alley need right now that they think it's a formalized city relationship would help with? And I'm just curious as to what their answer would be to that question.
And I wouldn't speak for them, but clearly the facilities are a big, big deal.
Right.
And both of those organizations have been dramatically helped by the city in regards to getting new space, whether the Astor House and Myers Hardware. So there's been a really good partnership between the city and both of those organizations from a facility standpoint in just the last year or two. I think
true.
all of the culturals are working on trying to acquire as many resources as they can, and money is a big deal. And the lodging tax appears to be a place that might be able to help them and sustain them. And so, to a large degree, part of the decision-making needs to be figuring out how does the lodging tax tie into the culturals in the community, and how is that administered? What are the prerequisites, the accountability, all those kinds of things? who ultimately who runs that. And I'm not sure that anybody has a well-defined answer for that at this point. That's a big piece of this.
That's really helpful.
And then I think just structurally in the city, it's kind of a big piece trying to understand if the current model works or if we need to do something different there with the other elements that the city has responsibility for, and then how that blends with the other culturals in town. So, we do have the Cultural Alliance that most of them belong to, including us. And so there is some structure there amongst all of the cultural folks in the community.
But it kind of sounds like there's a couple different tiers here, because we keep talking about Fine Arts Center and Miners Alley, but what about the Quilt Museum and, the Geology Museum at Mines, which is pretty independent, and the Railroad Museum, so they're a little farther out, I think.
But there's,
So, yeah.
there's, I don't remember the exact number, but a dozen
Yeah.
entities that. In regards to the Pram Board, I think you folks have taken a lot of big steps over the last few years to really spend a little bit of time on the museum piece of our operations through support in their planning processes. We've had, so like right now on this strategic plan that they've been working on, we have 3 Pram Board members that are sitting on that committee to help with that. You get the opportunity to see and view the deaccession lists that go through 3 or 4 times a year. You support a lot of the events that the Museum and History Center put on out there. I see many of you at a lot of the different special activities that they have with you folks showing them support there. So I think that, and then even, and we talked about this at the strategic plan meeting, but if you look at your responsibilities as a board of all of the people in our department that have all of their specific areas of responsibility, you touch and interface museum more than any of the other divisions. When was the last time, could any of you even recognize our golf staff? And you see Becky Richmond a little bit on the rec side, but not nearly as much as you do museums. Same thing with Chad Minard on parks, and this is the Parks and Recreation and Museums Board. So the museum piece of it, actually, FaceTime and interactions with the Pram group, they probably are at the top and of those interactions. Now, does that mean should we have the other divisions come in and have more FaceTime and touch time? Maybe. That really, to some degree, is what you folks want or don't want. But I think that in the last few years, there's been a really strong effort to make sure that museums are a part of this board's consideration and time. And I commend you. I think could it be more? Sure it could. But I think that there is a difference now than where it was 4 or 5 years ago, for sure. So just something to think about there too. Museums, Claire, you were asking about structure, and they're all over the board, but and that's true for municipal museums, but also then all the other nonprofit type museums or profit museums, they all have very unique and interesting models on governance there also. And but when you throw all the culturals together in Golden, we're a little peculiar because we do have this advisory board that doesn't operate in the same fashion that a nonprofit board would operate for other culturals. It's different. And some of our staff are more used to the nonprofit board model than they are the municipal model.
I imagine fundraising is just such a big part of those boards, and that's just, really
That's
hard.
what there's Friends really is, primarily fundraising.
So I don't know if that helped you or hurt you in thinking about how you want
Oops.
to answer these questions.
But it sounds like Steve wants to know an answer soon here for this, right?
Yeah. We couldn't push this to another meeting.
Yeah,
Needed help.
I don't know that we would learn anything
Right.
no.
more in between. I think just another thing is, thinking about the museum is that we always need more money to do more. So we didn't want to be ignored because we are part of the city as opposed to independent from it.
And is there any other board that deals with the facility issue? It strikes me that with exactly what you're talking about, Astor House, Myers Hardware, is there any other entity of whether it be an advisory board or a committee that's looking at facilities, for example?
Just
Does that
to the
exist?
Historic Preservation Board.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, just thinking that that's just another element of this, that if facilities are a big part, is there, like we have a committee for events, for example, and so I'm wondering if they would have a role somehow because their city facilities now being used by outside entities. Probably it's just, within the city Golden department, but not necessarily an advisory board associated would be my guess.
So we, as a department, primarily deal with the facilities, public facilities. So, we have responsibility for the History Museum and the History Park, and then all the recreation facilities and those kinds of things. We do maintenance on this building and fire stations and things like that. The other city boards, so the Public Arts Commission, they don't have facilities, but they do have art pieces that they oversee in all different sizes and shapes and things like that, but not actual structural buildings, those kinds of things. When we have worked, when the city has worked with Foothills for the Astor House and with Miners Alley for Myers, we end up through intergovernmental agreements or other methods having them be responsible for those facilities. So I don't have anything to do with the Astor House anymore. They take care of it on the Foothills Art side. We used to do that before it went that way, but does that answer your
It
question?
does, yeah.
And the Meyer Hardware was right at, like a
It's just a
sale.
straight, yeah, okay.
Like Schaefer sold it to Miners Alley and they may have had some city support, like maybe of funding, but it's owned by
Miners Alley.
Miners Alley.
Gotcha.
And the other cultures in town they own or lease their own space. So,
Do we have time to revisit Kermit's write-up for like another couple days before sending this back?
What do you mean?
Just this conversation's been helpful, and I think
Yeah.
I just want to look at it with fresh eyes and see if there's
Make some
anything to
amendments and
add.
suggestions and stuff?
Yeah.
so I think he's going back, I don't remember, might be the 12th, which,
It's in the minutes from last meeting.
is it?
Yeah. Steve agreed as his next briefing with council is July 26th.
Okay. Yep, so,
Oh, that's right, because our meeting would butt up right against that, so we wanted it after this meeting,
right.
right?
So our next meeting would be the 21st, and he would need his information in like by the 15th, 14th or 15th, something like that for that meeting. So we don't have another, unless you call a special meeting, we don't have another meeting.
Yeah, I was just more thinking, via email, looking at what you wrote, Kermit, and just adding to it, and maybe, is that a good way? Can we do it via email and just approve that way?
You can submit comments in email. I can consolidate those. I don't think it can be a formal action, but that's okay. You can submit comments. It doesn't have to be a formal action.
It's nice if you take a position and vote on it, but I think that would be probably the preferred way, but.
Can
Can we do
we
an
do
email
a
vote?
study session in July? Maybe with a walkthrough and other things?
If you wanted to have a special meeting for it, we could consider it. So the July 7th would be the traditional time to have a study session.
Do we want to
Kind of.
pull up Kermit's
I was wondering. just
bill right now?
to-
I can
yeah.
come ask for it.
I mean, I kind of feel like, kind of going back to where this started, there's such vague,
Yeah.
And they're not going to get
questions.
any less vague.
Yeah.
then, like, right, taking a position on very vague questions, we're probably going to give very rough general answers, so I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Rod, about taking on a position, but the position would kind of be, here you go.
That's fine.
So-
But by having you take a vote, it tells the council that you collectively looked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm after, not necessarily how specific or vague your answer is, more that there's some level of consensus
Yeah.
on whatever it is you're going to tell council or tell
Okay.
Steve.
But it kind of sounds like in the first question that somehow we're all talking about ways that the city should be a central part of the whole thing, whether it's a focal point or a committee or representatives, whatever it is. I don't know how that looks, but somehow the city should be working to consolidate all those different.
Like, it's, the only thing I would want to add to this feedback, which I think really requires consensus, is whether or not there's an appetite for this board to take on more, because I think that would be helpful feedback. Maybe they'd say, no, thanks, we don't want you to take it, which is also fine, but I think it'd just be a good question for the group, whether or not we would want to add to the sort of portfolio of decisions that we would, or at least advice that we would provide.
Add a couple letters to Pram.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we should take it on, like tying it to parks, you know, just organizationally and physically, and, you know, the public realm is just going to make a richer city by having it together. And yes, it's a lot to take on, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That's exactly why we should, because it's setting the path for like the next 50 years.
I'm in agreement, and I think there is the blending that's already happening with the museum. It would be, you know, just broadening that circle, but it's not, it wouldn't be awkward for, it's not like we're exclusively parks anymore, and it seems natural, so I'm in favor too. So I guess I would just say, Bram would you know, welcome the opportunity to take on more. Maybe that could be the next bullet.
Or to be an engaged stakeholder
Mhm.
as this moves forward, and as we figure out exactly
Yeah, what it
what's
is.
happening, just kind of make sure that one of us is at the table.
The motion just be to, for Pram to have an active role in, or that we're willing to have an active role.
It can be anything you want it to be. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing that,
I like that.
just from a format standpoint, Jackie, I'm guessing that, you know, what Kermit has done, I think, is a great thing. And you would basically, when you get it to say what you want it to say under those things, you take one motion to say, here's our response, versus trying to have a motion on each element of it.
Right. Is there a way to show Kermit's thing up on the screen?
It's
up there.
Oh, it's up. I hadn't looked.
Yeah. I had Steve's memo up earlier, and you
Yeah.
probably saw that, but
I did.
when you decided to
Yeah.
try to tackle this, this is Kermit's document.
I think the one thing I might add to your first bullet point, Kermit, is, you know, make it clear that the city should provide a clear, you know, path to funding opportunities, clear not necessarily that the city is the only source of funding, but, you know, if you want cultural funding, here are avenues available. So it's still the city acting as the focal point.
Yeah.
But, you know, okay, you want to go partner with the, you know, Foothills Art Center, here's how you do that. And
Would it be a separate point, or would you just?
maybe it's, I don't know, it might just be wrapped up in the first bullet there. But just make sure that, right, the avenues to obtaining funding with regard to cultural activities are clearly defined by the city.
Should I be trying to capture this, or are you working on it?
I'm working on it, for sure. Any help is appreciated.
Okay.
So I guess the thing I struggle with is how big this thing is we're talking about. So are we, does City of Golden want to help the Mountaineer Museum have funding opportunities, or the Geology Museum at School of Mines? And
I think at this stage in the conversation, we should think and dream big.
yeah,
Just more a signal that
yeah.
we support this
Yeah.
effort to, you know,
Yeah.
broaden the scope of arts and cultural programming.
So for question one, can we just try
Yes.
to
Let's-
sum that one up? Does anyone want to take a stab at
Well, I
summing
think
that
there
up?
would be one more bullet, right? I was trying to write it down, Pete, so, that the city articulates avenues to pursue funding for.
Funding and partnerships.
Well, the funding that we control, I mean, that's,
Yeah, I guess articulate avenues to funding, whether that be direct to city, right? If someone went straight to the city and said, here's what I would like to do, then here's the path, here's the point of contact for that. If it's someone that says, hey, I would like to partner with the Foothills Art Center and do something, or I would like to partner with this person, then okay, here's the avenue for that.
So it's not funding in general, it's city allocated funds.
yes.
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
I think that's important to distinguish.
Yeah,
Like, we're
so-
not going to help you get a
Right.
state grant or
No,
something
it's
else,
the,
or-
you know, to tap into this, you know, bank, this pot of city allocated funds.
Right.
Here is what you can do, and just make sure that that is clear, and people can find it, and if they have an idea, they can know how they can pursue it.
Recommend city design policy to pursue city funds, something like
Can we try?
that. Yeah.
The city should make a clear path and have access to the funding mechanisms, city allocated funding mechanisms, avenues to obtain funding for cultural activities. I don't know, but it is recorded. What I can do is try to wrap that up and send it out, and you guys, well, I guess you have to have it approved tonight. Can I try to articulate that one more time?
Just making stuff up.
It's good.
Is there anything in the 4 bullet points that you don't agree with or think needs to be changed? Are you all happy with what's there and then just trying to add this one?
I'm happy.
There's another one I think we should add, which is just that we want Pram to be involved.
I got that one.
Okay, cool. So 2 additional bullet points.
And in general, the concept of a process to obtain funding from city resource, in general, you're all in agreement with that? If we can wordsmith it
I like that.
to say
Yeah.
that? Good.
So the third point saying the Golden History Museum should have priority for city funding and assistance.
If we're controlling it, and you don't need, that point's kind of under it in a way. It was just that we didn't want to be ignored because we were part of the city.
Yeah.
There has been some question as to whether or not lodging tax, we would be eligible, or if it would go to non-city organizations. And this helps clarify your position that it should be city. The city should get some of its own money, if you're comfortable with that, if that's
So, I mean, I guess I kind of hear two different things, because I hear that we want the History Museum to have access to that. But then I think the words say have priority of that, which says that, all right, we received 3 proposals and one's from the History Museum automatically goes forward. And I'm not, is that the intent here?
I don't think so, is it?
So
Carmen?
maybe access would be a better word there, instead of priority.
I guess I think if we want, I mean,
Change the
depending on.
priority to access, does that,
Should access to city
should
funding?
have access for
So
city.
we're not shut out, but that we're not always at the top of the ladder there again.
Right, and, you know, that, and we go into the details later, but
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, absolutely have access, whether priority is the right word.
So change priority to access.
Yeah.
I think you might, is it access for as well, or access to? Access to city funding?
Yeah.
Yes,
Access-
for access to, priority for access to city funding and assistance.
Well, but we're gonna take out priority.
Yes,
Okay.
priority use. Anything else on this first one?
I mean, is this where we should talk about whether we need a cultural committee or contacts or something like that? Because those points are actually pretty specific little things. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah.
The alliance you mentioned, is that strictly for Golden? The Alliance for Cultural?
It includes culturals that are outside the city limits, but within our area.
What would
So,
consider?
you know, technically, the Railroad Museum's not in the city, and Buffalo Bill is not in the city, but I think they both
I do too.
participated, so.
This one has the assumption that these cultural partners want to all be working together, right? Is that safe to assume, or?
I can't speak for them.
Do you have an impression?
I think it ebbs and flows, and I think one of the common denominators is trying to get additional resources.
Yes, they're competitive for.
But they collaborate too,
Yes.
if they can get more resource.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like, you have a couple very targeted points. It seems to me like just some regular cadence of, right, everyone communicating with each other about how we tie this together. And the people who are involved are the people, ones who, you know, the people that show up are the ones that are going to guide this and take a look at the Vision 2030 and help steer that. And I imagine the Art Center will be part of that, the History Museum will be part of that. If there's, you know, that could be, you know, the regular cadence of, all right, tie in someone from the Pram Board or people from the Pram Board and the Public Art Commission and whoever else has some sort of stake, and just have a regular cadence to keep the conversation going. I don't know what else.
Yeah, or if like the city, I mean, this is a program overlay, but you know, like where each museum took turns doing something in public in maybe one of our parks. To kind of pull them into the public eye, but I don't know if it's necessarily up to the city to have to facilitate that.
In the next question, the first bullet under it, the comment kind of addresses the organizations
Yeah, so
themselves.
that quarterly meeting is kind of the regular cadence of get stakeholders, make sure there's city stakeholders, make sure there's external stakeholders, make sure that if people care, then they have an avenue to talk. Which they're,
What are DEI initiatives?
Which one?
And the second bullet under,
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know, to the first one, how can they work together? I mean, much of that.
Well, and I think that's sort of where I'm going with this, is that it seems like, I mean, we could provide input, but just signaling that, you know, if city council or whoever is ultimately deliberating over this wants to know, you know, where it should land, just signaling to them that there's a willingness, it seems
Well,
natural, might be a good
And
place
the
to
third,
have that bullet
the
land.
third bullet does that. Pram is advocate and, but could also act as a coordinating group.
Yep, and yeah, maybe that one moves up to the second question.
So we want to take that bigger role that we're coordinating outside of the Golden History Museum.
And maybe coordinating's not the word. but,
I mean, yeah, that could be a really big job.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's a bucket of money available, there's going
Yeah.
to be lots of people
Is
interested.
this all of it then?
Oh, there's one more.
Yeah, that's just an example I thought about where the,
I don't think we have to worry about that one so much.
Mr. Glick has done some research and pulled some of those out, and I think that some of the people that have seen that have a couple of models that they kind of like that they've been able to identify. And I don't know that, maybe those were in his memo.
Can I add 40 West Arts District in Lakewood
That's an
Sure.
example.
as an example? That's public-private partnership, but was spearheaded by the city. It's the Ritter Comprehensive Planning Department, I believe.
So under this bullet on the last question, put it there.
Yeah.
Amir, what is it called?
I think it's called the 40 West Arts District. It's that Green Line project. It's an example of a designated cultural area. And then the other ones, I think Westwood in Denver, Santa Fe Arts District, Rhino, and another one I'm blanking on. But I think the Lakewood one may be the most comparable for how the city was involved in
Okay.
establishing it.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, Arvada's Art Center is excellent, and I just think, yeah, there's a lot of great programming that comes out of it,
Yeah.
the classes.
And that was one that we met with when we were under discussion with Foothills to
Okay.
talk to them about how they were run and
Uh-huh.
how they set up.
That one's kind of an island, though.
It is
you
an
know.
island, it's just more the content and programming.
Oh, the programming's amazing.
Yeah.
So do you see anything else that you'd like to take out or add?
On which one? Either?
On any of them?
I mean, I think we ought to talk about the
Coordinating.
coordinating group for other non-city-owned cultural assets.
Is that question two?
Oh, right at the very
It's the
last
third one.
item.
This bullet point?
That starts with Graham.
Is it,
You talked about moving that one up to the second question, but you want to massage it before you do that?
Yeah.
And maybe that last part, I mean, it seems like there's sort of two ideas in there. The first one, we could just sort of end it at, Pram is an advocate for GHN, the city's largest cultural asset. And then the second point is just coming back to this general theme of Pram would like to have a role, or is willing to have a role, depending on, you know, the scope of what that might be. But did that caveated enough, do you think?
Yeah. Depending on the non-city-owned interest level.
Mhm, mhm.
I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
other work you did on it.
Mhm.
yeah, I think when you think about being a coordinating group, like you say, do those people even want to be coordinated?
Yeah.
So, you know, it
Yeah.
might be herding cats if we're trying to get the Railroad Museum to get along with Buffalo Bill or something.
Could we put in something about like the physical infrastructure, like have Pram be thinking about the public space and how it's connecting the, you know, the museums,
Mhm.
so people are moving in, out, in between them. You know, like what if all that space in between was a park in some way?
Yeah,
Would that maybe,
connectivity or something.
maybe fall up here under the second question, internal and community cultural partners work together to achieve community goals set out?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just stuck on this cultural, exploring that idea of cultural district, or, is there a park element that could be, park or open space element that could be the connecting tissue, between all of these in some way?
Where would you like that put in, that second question, or so this is, the top one's number 2.
Like in the document or physically in
Yeah,
the city?
in the document. In the document.
I don't know. Maybe number 2?
Yeah, I think it's 2, right? Internal and community cultural partners.
Because that would be like a
Partnership.
parks-driven thing.
Yeah, internal, and we could be a partner too, those
Mhm.
entities ourselves.
I was just thinking with Miners Island moving to Miners and Foothill moving to Astor, they all join on to the history park, basically.
And we also own that parking lot, right? The city does. I mean, it's just begging to be an arts plaza, to me.
Like that idea.
Well, they also took the history
Push out
museum.
a little further, a little further.
Yeah, and then we develop the rest of Arapahoe Street and connect to the Geology Museum. But, yeah, I don't know how to word it in here.
You have explore parks and or open spaces that provide connection between,
Between cultural amenities
okay, thank you.
in the downtown area to create a district.
I liked what you said about the physical spaces, right? So Pram being, a part of, evaluating the physical space connectivity between the different art centers.
It's a nice notion,
Yeah.
especially where it is in the city with, Washington being our commercial core. This is your cultural and pedestrian and walkability and all the 2030 kind of corridor.
And will Astor House retain any city parcel, like the little adjacent park, or is that now also, that's
Yes,
another?
that's for them.
That's for them now, okay.
Any other comments, thoughts, tweaks, additions, subtractions? I guess what I'd suggest maybe is, do you think there's consensus among you for the discussions that have been had with the various little tweaks? And if you do, maybe we can have a motion and a second and vote. And then what I would suggest would be, based on the recording, Stacy will be wonderful and put something together, shoot it out to you before it goes to Mr. Glick, just so that you all have eyes on it again, and can be comfortable that we didn't mess something up.
Thank you for making sense of our ramblings.
Yes,
Yeah.
massive.
The recordings are-
It's just the questions are vague, the answers can be vague too. And they'll come back and ask us, if they want more, they'll come back and ask us. So I think that's good.
You want to give abstract answers?
Yeah.
The abstract questions?
Absolutely.
Did we, before we can make a motion to do what Rod just said, do I have to put it?
I can help you. You're right.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to edit Kermit's suggestions
Based on this discussion.
based on the discussion we just had, and have that be our reply to Steve Glick's question. Did I miss anything?
That's great.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Let's move on. Creek update.
Oh, well, we have a creek. It's running at about, huh?
Finally got here.
And it's running about 600 CFS. It has been closed. It is currently opened back up. There is this council subcommittee, Councilor Brown, Councilor Fisher. There is a committee that our city staff that meet at least weekly, every Monday. There are a lot of different modifications and changes that have come through all sorts of effort this spring. So some of the things that are new and different or being implemented is parking. So we're trying to push people to use the 304 10th Street parking lot, which is the one on the north side of the old Coors building that we tore down. So we've put porta potties there. We have variable message signs that tell people Free Creek parking and pointing them in that direction. And we have instituted permit parking in the creek corridor west of there. So all the way down in here is primarily permit parking. And they've moved 2 parking kiosks, so it's the same system as what's used in downtown, only it's the same style of system, but it's its own system for 10th Street area and all of that. So there's a new parking device right here by the library, and then one down by the Lions Park restroom. And it is 2 hours free parking, but you still need to register, and then paid parking after that. The lot that is by the beach and the west side of the ball fields is drop-off only. There's no regular parking in there. And so we've had to tweak some things. We've been working with the library a little bit because they're impacted, the community center's impacted, RV Park, Public Works, the annex, all of that. So lots of efforts there. Just as an example, the community center, the 10th Street lot, which is down there, is free parking. But we don't want it to be taken up by creek users. We want it specifically left for the patrons of the facility. So on weekends, we have a guard that is talking to people as they come in to make sure they're using the facility. So this whole parking piece is really different than what it has been in the past.
Ron, my only question is the public parking garages and public parking lot, their pay as well, right?
No.
Oh, you no longer have to pay for the,
Well, not on weekends.
on the week?
Downtown?
Yes,
Yeah, not on the weekends.
Okay, but during the week?
Yes, but in the creek corridor, it is on the weekends. So,
Right, got it.
so if you went to a downtown parking structure on the weekend, you could park free. We've been working with the outfitters on equipment and different things like that. We have the flag system that's functioning now, so we've had red flags up when the water was too high, and it's back down to a yellow flag. What else can I tell you? We have striped the trails, so they now have lines on them. We are asking the through cyclists to use the south side, the tubers and pedestrians that like to go slow to use the north side. We're asking people to use good trail etiquette, single file, all of that good stuff. Bikes on the north side for sure, I think 8 miles an hour or lower, and signal when you pass people with an audible, yes. The police department will be enforcing park rules. We have an ambassador program that Stacy heads up for us. And how many ambassadors do we have now?
5.
And they'll be out on weekends, primarily at the beach and around Billy Drew. And they're really educational and informational. And then the next tier are our park rangers, and I think we have 6 or 7 of them. And they are a little bit more enforcement. They can do administrative functions. And then we have code enforcement, and we've been authorized for several more positions, but we've had a difficult time getting code enforcement officers. So there currently are not many out doing that.
What is a person's requirement for that? Like actually, actual officer?
It's not a full sworn officer for code enforcement. But they do have to have more training, and I'd have to get you, I could pull a job description for you, but, and they're supposed to be the primary enforcement in the group. They really are supposed to be the.
Are you interested? Is that why you're asking?
No, I thought Pete might.
I need another big these days.
A lot of imposters going down there.
Strippers.
So some of the key enforcement pieces are off leash, are open container. Those are really big ones. Trying to keep people from using grills in the parks. They can use propane up to 2-pound bottles, but nothing above that. No charcoal, no open fire.
It's okay to have the charcoal on your raft while you're going down there.
We have been successful in procuring a private contractor to do trash removal in the creek corridor and downtown. And our parks folks are just elated. And that's going to start next week. And they're making a couple of runs a day on trash, which should be very helpful and nice.
How much are they collecting? I'm just kind of curious what any sense of how, I mean, it seemed, I imagine it's a lot with just the pure use.
It is.
Yeah.
And I don't have exact data number for you. The council also is really supportive in we're buying new trash and recycling and potentially composting containers. They won't be in till late July, but they're the same, similar to what the national parks use, so they're like bear-proof type things. And we're pretty excited about that. So those are some of the updates. And these, and then we have, I gotta be careful here, but we have a lot of signs that are going up. And they're going up as we speak and through next week, a lot of signs. So for all sorts of different things. So be prepared to see that. And those are the main elements. We've had some good media coverage on the creek closure. There is a press conference on Tuesday with police, fire, and parks talking about these different elements that I've mentioned to you tonight. And I don't know who will pick it up, but I think there will be some TV coverage for that. So we're well on our way, and we'll see how it goes this year. And we'll be having to probably modify and adjust as things come up because there's just a lot of new stuff that everybody's trying to figure out.
Is Lions Club hosting the 4th of July down there again?
They are. They do have a party planned. There are no fireworks this year in Golden.
Because of the fire danger.
The decision was made a few weeks ago that we're just not going there this year. In past years, you know, it'll be either problems with no open flame kind of things, fire danger. Sometimes it's wind. It just gets super windy, and they just made the decision there. We're going to have to go somewhere else if we want to watch fireworks the night of the 4th. But Lions are doing their party. So.
With the drop-off pickup in the parking lot, is are any of the outfitters using that too to drop them?
They could.
Okay.
Although primarily, I think there's one of the 3 outfitters that is really getting set up to do shuttles, and their primary shuttle spot will be the Gateway trailhead for Jeffco across 6th Avenue. That's where their primary drop-off will be.
Makes more sense.
Yeah. Any other questions about the creek?
All right. Let's move on then. The capital improvement plan, preliminary.
So we talked last meeting about it just a little bit, and you have small and large copies of last year's CIP that will give, especially if there's new folks, an idea of kind of how we break things out, what it looks like. I can tell you that I think the new CIP sheets that we're supposed to fill out, turn in, are probably due, we'll probably see them and have them due over a period of a week or two. It's not going to be a long lead time. And I'm not sure how that's going to fall regards to our meetings here. And so at council meeting this last week, they had their very first preliminary discussion on budget. And there was some discussion about some generalized CIP things that staff provided just for them to give some consideration and think about. One of the things that we included in that departmentally is we included funding wildfire mitigation efforts on open space. So we have a new wildfire mitigation plan that came about at the very same time that the Marshall fires happened. I think that it was just a coincidence. We've been working on it, but there is a lot of effort and a lot of concern right now by a lot of citizens about wildfires. And so this plan articulates and highlights some of the mitigation efforts that can take place to help make things better and reduce risk. And we're having a public meeting. This is all being driven by the fire department. We're having a public meeting on June 29th here in this room for all the citizens to come. And we'll have representatives of the fire department. I'll be there for our side for open space. Jeffco will be there. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. A lot of it boils down to what you can do on your property to reduce hazard removal of brush and things that are close to your house that catch on fire easy, a lot of that. But then people worry, okay, I take care of my yard, but you're right on the other side of the fence and there's all this rabbit brush and we're scared it's going to catch on fire and get us. And so from our perspective, we need to be prepared to do some mitigation in key places. The other piece of this, besides the public meeting, the plan breaks Golden out into 10 different basic neighborhoods. And so every one of them have unique characteristics. And for us, if there are houses in that neighborhood that are on the edge of open space, there are places that we can't get to easy. Some of them, because of the topography, we really have a hard time even getting back in to do anything if we are going to do anything. So we're taking the approach that after the big public meeting, they're going to do localized meetings and take walks and look at things and all of that. But we're going to need money to do some mitigation in different parts of our open space area. We also are getting a ton of complaints from citizens about areas like the Welch Ditch that doesn't carry water anymore, that all the trees along it have died. And so that's not necessarily open space, but there's a lot of fuel in those areas that citizens would like someone to address. There's also elements along, for example, 58, where in CDOT right-of-way, there is a lot of dead trees, and we've tried working with the state, and they've maybe done a little bit of cleanup, but there's more cleanup to be done. So one of the feedback from council the other night as they began to look at budget was they were very supportive of putting money in to do tree removal or fuel removal from open space and other key areas in the community. They also were really interested in shuttles, and that's not necessarily directly in our department, but that was another big element that they had. So for us, we're going to talk
Sorry,
about...
Rod, I missed that. Did you say shuttles?
Yeah, shuttles.
Oh.
Transportation.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
In-town
I
transportation.
see.
One of the things we're going to talk about in a minute are sports fields. That's a big one. Pickleball courts, big one. Restrooms, we have funding this year. We're finding that the dollar amounts that we put in to work on redoing restrooms is probably not enough. You can imagine the increased costs that we're seeing on these things. So more money for restrooms, primarily by the Astor House, Parfit, and Lions Park. money for master plan, open space to do phase 2, and maybe even look departmentally at an update for the department master plan. And then Bachman is a question mark, and we're going to have those folks come talk to us next month. So those are some of the things that we have begun to identify. If you look on here, on the big sheet, you can see from previous years, like the very top, these were elements that the Pram board last year talked about that we kind of looked at. If you can look and see the years out. So really, the only thing that was potentially funded was a downtown splash pad in 22. 23 included maybe Jackson Street Ped Bridge if it was a part of the Heart of Golden. Heart of Golden hasn't gone anywhere yet, so neither of those are specifically funded.
So like the splash pad, does that get shifted, that 200,000, does that get shifted to 2023?
Only if we ask for it to be shifted. It isn't automatically going there.
But we can't do it in 2022.
Right. And you're absolutely right. So is it still a priority? Is it something still, or are there other things that are more important to you as you sit here today? You have those options. You can look at it either way. You can say, yeah, that's still a big priority. Move it to 23.
Otherwise, where does it go?
It disappears. It can disappear. Once you get it on the list, it doesn't have to stay there.
So why wasn't it like
Funded?
Yeah.
Because Heart of Golden has gone nowhere.
Okay.
We had the
So that's right.
We had the pandemic. If you look on there, it says it has Bachman Plan, Master Plan and Development, DeLong Master Plan and Development, Gramscis Master Plan and Development, Clear Creek Lions reconfiguration as possible projects, and then possible Heart of Golden inclusions. So Jackson Street Ped Bridge, redevelopment museum space, snow lot improvement, downtown splash pad. Heart of Golden has not gotten any legs to be able to fund any of that. So what we had funded in 21 is we all celebrated DeLong. We got that done. And Bachman Park Master Plan is waiting on what we're going to talk about next month. So you can see this going out in the out years, and that can change a lot too, Craig. So we could have it on there, and we could push it to out years, but we don't have to. We can delete it. We can try to make it a priority and move things up closer if we think we can find funding through the finance department for that. So you guys get to say what you would hope to have happen, and then we see how it goes through finance, city manager, and council. This also gives you some general idea of the other facilities and areas of the department that have items that almost everything you see there is taking care of existing infrastructure. It's really not anything new. It's primarily just taking care of what we have. So
I would note that a lot of these dollar amounts will change just because of where we are today in our economy.
Yeah.
So I would not pay attention to those dollar amounts much.
right, that's true.
Well, should there be a line item there for open space development? Is that something we could put in? Would it be an appropriate place to put that in if we're going to have?
Phase 2, right? I mean, inventory, wouldn't
Yeah.
that require another contract potentially?
Inventory for,
Open space.
The phase 2, is that, I don't think that was incorporated in the.
so it is not in here, but we have it on the list I mentioned before I pulled this out.
Oh,
This is last year.
Yeah, this was 2 years ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
and this is what we will do again with
This-
whatever you want to recommend.
Yeah, this, we will recreate this with your new ideas or different ideas or similar ideas at the top, and then fill in with all of the other things that we typically do to try to keep our infrastructure in place. So those areas I mentioned to you before I grabbed this, the sports fields, pickleball, restrooms, master plan, and wildfire mitigation. Those are all things that aren't on here that we think will need to place someplace in there.
Okay.
And all of those primarily are new things. The restrooms aren't, but everything else is pretty new.
When are we doing that?
What?
When are we doing that exercise, like the making the new one?
Well, maybe now.
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it doesn't have to all be now, but here's what's going to happen is our finance department's going to spit out the CIP sheets to us at some point in the next couple of weeks. And they're going to give us a date when they want them back. And we may or may not have a meeting in the time.
That was my question. When are
Yeah, we
doing
may or may
sheets?
not have a meeting in the time they give us to do this. And so last month, we talked about this just a little bit. This month, we're giving you this to be able to look at as a reference point from this history. And if, one of the easiest things we can do is we can go around the table and say, are there any things to projects or purchases, equipment, facilities, programs, whatever, that you folks collectively or individually think would be good to throw in here to make sure we capture that. So however and whenever those dates come at us, we can get them in.
I just have a quick question. The Tony Grampus Master Plan and Development
Yes.
for 10 million, I don't remember that one at all.
It's been there for a long time.
Okay.
And just for a second, so you're familiar with Tony Grams's park out there. It was originally built by Coors as their company park. They ended up giving it to Jeffco. Jeffco ended up giving it to us. It's well-loved. Stacy's little boys play ball out there. It's an institution. It was not built to community standards. The equipment, the lighting, the whole place is substandard from what it should be for a municipal facility. And so at some point, we believe we need to go out there, take a blank piece of paper, figure out how it best works for community standards, redesign it, and then figure out how to fund it, and likely through phases, develop it as more of a community park. It's got good acreage out there. I think it's 60 or 80 acres. And so it might look very different than it does today, but it really needs a facelift. So that's what that's about.
Okay, yeah.
While we're talking about that, that area in the front of it that's all dug up right now, is
Yes.
that for pickleball, or is that, what is that?
It could be for pickleball. What was there were sand volleyball courts.
Yeah.
And those sand volleyball courts got in disrepair. And one of the problems that we've had with Grams's is the ditch runs along the west side of the property, right off of Easley Road. It goes up to where the driveway is into the bike park. It takes a sharp right and goes east all the way over almost to new terrain, and then it heads north again. And water runs in that ditch for 4 months a year. And when water runs in that ditch, we get natural springs that come up throughout the park. And they move. So you could have water coming out of the ground here this year. Next year, that might be dry, and there's water coming up over here. And we fought that for years and years and years. And multiple natural springs have come up in our volleyball court and making it unplayable, making sand go out, all of that. So we tore it out, but we haven't fixed it yet or haven't decided what we're going to do with it. It could be a place for pickleball courts with a post-tension concrete that's not going to. And the other thing that happened was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the ditch company came in and lined the ditch for a portion of it. So our natural springs have gone away in parts of the park, not all of the park, but parts of the park. So, but that's what's going on out there, Craig, is it was a sand volleyball court, disrepair, took it out, to be determined. We can grass it and just make it a grass area like its surroundings. We could look at it for a location for pickleball. We could take ideas on other things that we might want to see in.
Is the bike park part of Tony Graham's?
It is.
Does it go further north than where the bike park currently ends, or is that pretty much the northern extent of?
It goes a little bit further north.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big chunky
Yeah,
acres.
it is. It is. So, and it's got this archery range in there that we lease to an archery club. That's pretty unique. But that's a big piece of ground that if you were going to just take a clean slate and look at it, there's a lot of different ways you might want to do things in there.
Well, if we're gonna start going around the room here, I'd like to promote the splash pad, downtown splash pad, to push it off into 2023 rather than letting it just go away. If you guys are,
If it's tied to to the Heart of Golden, is 2023 far enough out?
We could have two, like,
You can never have too many splash pads.
yeah,
That's right.
it's,
I'm just wondering if that's right. If it's contingent upon this Heart of Golden going forward, then
oh, I see. You like put it in a different line item that's not tied to Heart of Golden.
Further out in years.
or I was just thinking like maybe 2024 is the appropriate thing, or whenever the Heart of Golden thing actually looks like it is getting
So
momentum.
one element to consider on the splash pad is where would we site it? Right? I mean, what property, where is the best place for it?
Yeah.
And that makes some difference, because if it's in the area that would be affected by the Heart of Golden, if that really takes off, we likely aren't going to put it there until we know what that's going to be.
Okay.
So that's, from a timing perspective, it's sort of half a dozen one, six of another, right? If we find a place that we think would be appropriate that isn't touched by Heart of Golden, then there's nothing to keep us from getting it done, right?
It should be in the Miners Alley Art District.
I love it. I have a spot for it.
Yeah. The perfect spot for it is the backside of Astor House, but I don't know what they're going to be doing there. In that field.
That's not ours to control anymore.
Yeah. But anyhow, so what you're saying is if we put it, if we want it to be not within the Heart of Golden deal, we should push for funds for next year, but if we want it to be within the Heart of Golden area, to Pete's point, we should push it down the road a little bit further. But I guess if we put it in 2023, next year we'll probably be doing this again, right?
Yeah.
That's right. We can push it to 24 and 25. If we push it to 24 now, they may say, oh, we don't have to think about it quite yet.
Yeah.
So,
The one little bit of drawback on that is if we put it in 23 and we really don't think we can get it done, and if it gets approved, then there's money that we could be using for a need that we could get done that's just going to sit there. So that's one, and, there's not a right or a wrong answer on that.
We also have to justify it too.
Right.
When we request the CIP funds, we have worksheets that we complete, and on the worksheets, they're vetted by formulas. We check boxes and see if they're connected to community values, and then we justify where they might be built or had or wherever it is affected, this infrastructure, So we have to make sure that whatever we're asking for is a justifiable, credible ask. Right?
True. Well said.
Craig wants one. That's not enough.
I'm supportive of, just anecdotally, I think my daughter is in the awesome Golden Community Center day camp right now, and they just took a field trip on Tuesday, and the highlight was that place had a splash pad, and it was awesome. And so the fact that, it's not something that's right in walking distance from the community center, I mean, to me, I think it makes sense in sort of that Heart of Golden area, but I'd love to see one. I think it would be awesome.
We've got it written down.
Yeah. And maybe that's a topic for next meeting, to explore that question of, is it in Heart of Golden or is that outside of the
Did
scope?
the School Minds kids pick some locations in their study? I don't remember. I remember.
Yeah, they had picked up Parfait.
Parfait.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah.
That wouldn't be bad either. Perfect.
Or that park that's been sitting empty in downtown Golden
Yeah.
for like 10 years.
Which one is that?
A little park that's in between the two buildings.
It's
that
privately owned, right?
Yeah, we don't know.
Is it like, I thought it was Guru's.
It's not ours. It might be Gert's, I'm not sure, but it's not ours.
I was thinking what's the hanging
Oh.
tree park?
I know where it goes. There's that little pocket park on Washington.
On the east side.
Oh,
Like on the Kona where they just moved into, there's like a little pocket park thing and there's like some plants and a bench.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's totally underutilized. That's good.
That's,
And where is it?
Who owns that?
that's what I thought we were talking about, and we
Yeah.
don't own it. I'm not sure who, it might be Gert's.
Oh, I thought we were talking about across from the mill.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
no,
what I-
that's Vanover Park.
Vanover.
No, the one
No,
Burgess
up
Park
above.
side.
Oh, that's not ours,
Yeah.
that's Coors.
Oh,
Coors owns Burgess Park.
Burgess.
Coors
That
owns
little,
Burgess.
that little spot on Main Street that occasionally, like during the Halloween deal, they might put like a little thing in there. But I don't know. I've never in 10 plus years seen someone in that park.
Yeah, it's not ours.
Oh, we should buy it. We should buy it.
That wouldn't be a spray ground, that'd be a shower.
It is pretty small. Yeah.
It'd be hard to-
But,
We've got it on the list.
Okay.
all right, cool.
And you have open space on the list, phase 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those things that I mentioned
Yeah.
early, they're all going to be plugged in, whether we're successful
Yeah.
or not, but those will all be plugged in.
What about the art project along Gateway Connection?
Oh, yeah, trail signage. Oh, are we still going around the table? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to.
Okay, I have two. And I was thinking of that trail signage on the creek. Yeah, gateway, whatever you want to call it. Gateway signage. I'd be careful using the word art. For what this is. And can we add under museums, history park improvements?
We will have some of those already. Do you have something specific?
No, but I just bet that if we ask Nathan, like, if you
Oh, I've
had
already got
money-
his list.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's,
You've got a list.
yeah,
I had a feeling. I just want to make sure that was included in it.
yeah, I didn't bring it tonight, but he and I talked about a half dozen projects over there that will get plugged in.
Okay, great.
Expensive restrooms.
I'm not sure, I don't remember those, but maybe. I don't
The
remember
park
those.
needs them.
Yeah. it could
To be historically correct, they should have still,
There you go.
get some of
With
those old
samples?
apples.
Well, that parking lot's a good place for projects, too. All right, go ahead.
That was one of mine. And where, so Bachman is funded in that, so we don't have to worry about moving those funds. Is that what I was understanding?
No, we need, if that's a priority, we need to
Like the
include it.
design portion of it?
What's that?
The design portion of it? the
So,
60.
so we have funding, we do have funding for the design portion this year, but we're likely not gonna get it done until we get it solved, whether it's gonna be a pond or a park.
And also the land swap, right?
Right, and we're hoping that will be done this fall.
So should we push that to 23?
That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that,
And that's, just so you know, that piece is on the city council's strategic plan too. That's one they have their eye on, that would like to see that.
Yeah.
I think this more goes to goals, but to the extent the timing with the land swap works out, I'd just love to see that really take off. And then, yeah, I think splash pad and signage might also be another opportunity to communicate with the Public Arts Commission. To me, it seems like there could be some good overlap there, so I don't know if it comes from two avenues to see it on budget line items, but to the extent we could let them know we're putting it on our list. Do we have a rep that's supposed to be the sort of representative to the Public Arts Committee, or is it commission? I know I've
I thought we did at one
I'd
time.
have to go back and
Look
see
at
the
the
list and
list.
see who that is. I'd be afraid to try to guess.
Yeah.
without Looking, we have it documented
Okay.
in the minutes and people used to report out.
Yes, yeah, to the extent whoever is sort of assigned to the Public Arts Commission, if they want to just let them know, whether it's just a written public comment or otherwise, that we're contemplating including these.
Because we did send them a memo of what we were thinking.
Right.
So it wouldn't be the first time.
Maybe Cindy.
Cindy?
It might be.
That's right, she was,
Maybe
she was on that.
Oh,
commission.
yeah, like she was working
Mhm.
with the two ladies on that.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for me.
Something that I think we've talked about at some point in the last few years, but comes to mind is some sort of larger outdoor climbing structure. And we talked about the small one that's at Normandy that I see kids scrambling on all the time, and something larger than that, say by the rec center or something, would be kind of a fun way. Again, kind of partnering, could potentially partner with American Mountaineering Center, other groups in town. The rec center has the climbing classes indoors, and the little climbing wall indoors, and outdoor ones are kind of fun for this, like, publicly accessible, get people interacting with each other.
We're actually looking at the potential of taking the indoor ones at the community center out. That we're not getting the use. It doesn't mean we would get use on an outdoor structure.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge there's a little bit of challenge of how high do you go? Is it for bouldering, or do you want to be able to top rope, or put self-belaying devices on there, whatever? But
You think the liability issue with me?
Yeah.
What do you think, Peter?
I was imagining just bouldering. That we were up in Jackson Hole a few years ago, and they've got this great big expansive thing where there's things where everyone can go and climb something, and none of it's to the point of being dangerous. And I guess you can always hurt yourself. Nothing. I don't believe that they had any top rope sort of things.
Are you talking about the base of Snow King?
Maybe. I think so.
And BV has just one singular one in their new section that they've developed, and it's just nice. It's really nice and wide. It has a little bit of something for everybody. It doesn't have multiple ones, which I think would be nice, but it just really struck me as like, oh, I can have fun, and my daughter's around the corner also enjoying this.
Yeah, I know Clear Creek has so much good rock climbing. Just going up the creek, there's the stuff right along the water from there. There's the stuff up the lookout. It's definitely part of the area. The other thing that I don't know if it falls into this, but kind of thinking back to the process that we had to go through on the Loop Bond Trail, and how it got in such disrepair, and then finally it was to the point where it was like, all right, we can't sink enough money into it. Putting some dedicated effort to some of the other city-owned trails, and I'm thinking more specifically the ones on North Table, and doing some preemptive trail maintenance, because those are seeing a lot more use than they have
Agreed.
historically, and they're starting to slide off the mountain. And it'd be nice to get those shored up before it's beyond the point of repair.
Yep, I agree.
I've seen e-bikes going up that one a few times now.
What, Lubon?
No, the one on North Table. I think it's Golden Cliffs, going up from the neighborhood.
Really?
I never would have imagined I'd seen someone trying to ride up that, but
They are, huh? That's crazy.
e-bikes give you a lot of boost.
Yeah.
Very good.
What they said. But the other thing, and I don't know if this is part of this thing, but the parking for Triceratops Trail is it's a great resource out there, and people can't get there very well, and so we have to annex the school lines parking lot or something. That's all I've got.
Got it.
If you go and get your COVID test, can you go hike the trail at the same time?
If you're positive.
Go.
I was just looking at the budget for the new history museum at 15 million.
So
It-
that would be hard gold.
Yes.
That's how that would shake out.
Okay, what about collection storage?
Same thing, we have in here, we have,
It's in there too,
Right.
for 2 million.
yeah. And we're working on a couple of different possibilities there.
Okay.
So you see it's pushed out to 24. But if we're able to sort through and get something solved there, we might be able to have council authorize funding if we have a solution. So we've looked, collection storage is terrible. I think you've all heard the story, maybe seen it. We looked at a metal building structure at Ulysses Park by the little fire station at the entrance. Combination of police evidence storage, fire department history storage, like they have a couple of old fire trucks, and then museum. And looked at a metal building there, and they did a lot of work on it, but it doesn't make sense. We're looking at another location that I toured earlier this week with Mr. Glick and a couple of other department heads that may have some possibilities. So I think that stays where it is for now, but
Okay.
we know that it's a need.
Yeah.
It's a definite need.
Anything else on your side? The one I, since Samira said we could do two, I think we're bringing that one up. Just kidding. Something we talked about years ago is, we've got all these, great bike paths around the city. We talked about like maybe putting like little skeleton workout stations like here, one over here, so people can, really like run to this location, do like, maybe it's a pull-up stand, and then they run, another mile to a different station, and just kind of similar to the station we have there by the tennis courts in Lions Park, but maybe not as big. But it would be cool to have like little satellite stations, which I don't know that would cost a whole lot for each one, that people could kind of connect and do like a little workout. I don't know if that sounds like a good idea to anybody.
It sounds cool, and it is cool, but compared to like other layouts of that stuff, I think they've found that, there's the circuit approach, but I think it's also worth considering if you want to do more of a cluster, because I think they found that people like going with their friends, there's more community building interaction if you do a cluster. So I think we just have to ask ourselves, like, if we're going to be adding like public workout equipment, like just consider both options. Maybe it's like multiple clusters, but there is like that community piece that has like proven itself that like that layout is better for. And also like being able to go with multiple generations and age groups. You have kind of, more of like different age groups going to a place together if it's a clustered experience too. So
Gotcha.
I think it's just something worth considering.
Yeah, the one over in Applewood Park comes to mind. Spending lots of time in Applewood Park.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and that's more like it's the cluster, I think, right, where there's stations for multiple things right in there. And
Yeah. And I was thinking without the cluster, then you don't have to deal with parking and I was trying to disperse.
It's more
people
surgical for sure.
rather than bring them, clump people together again. But anyhow, any other ideas for the group?
So if we get the opportunity to come back to you after we get the forms before they have to be turned in, we will. If not, we'll probably shotgun it out to you as we get it done. But we'll definitely share back with you something similar to this with the input from staff, like for the museums and community center, parks, all that stuff. So,
Sounds good.
and if you think of other things, shoot us an email. Something else comes to mind. Thank you.
All right. Can you give us a sports field update discussion?
You bet. So, we have multi-use fields up at Rooney Road, and I want to, where am I here? So you're all kind of familiar with where they are, all of that. Really bad disrepair. The county wants to take all of this space and create slash, biosolid, all sorts of different, mostly fire mitigation places to bring wood. And then they want to develop this area as sort of a park area. We have 5 synthetic turf fields up here. We lease the whole space except for this building, all the way over to Colfax and Rooney Road. We lease it all. So these fields are in really bad shape. They're about 15 years old. It's primarily used by the soccer club Ice, and they and anybody else that uses the fields have contributed to a replacement fund for these synthetic turf fields. We can't put any water up there. We can't plant plants that need water. We can't put up big lights for nighttime stuff because it's on a landfill and it's got a rubberized cap on it that we can't puncture. So it will not ever be a nice park sports complex. But the fields work, and so we need to, there's been a lot of settling from the landfill. If you go up there and look, you got to decide which side you want to guard because one's a lot higher than the other one, that kind of thing. We've gone out and looked at it, and we're going to lose, and the lease is up in 26. And so for us to go in and replace these fields, we need to do a new lease with the county because we don't want to spend all the money on artificial turf and then have to be off in 3 years or something like that. So the price tag to fix those 4 main fields, this field, the lowest field, goes away because the county is not going to let us stay there long term, is about $3.5 million. And we've been gathering since we opened it in 2007, we have about $1.2 million. So to fix those 4 fields back to an acceptable playable condition is $3.5 million. And there's nothing to keep those fields from deteriorating immediately with movement from the landfill underneath. We've been lucky to get as much life out of them as we have so far. Part of that $3.5 million is to go in and take the material out, re-level the material, get them so that they're pristine, but we just don't know how long they would last. So that's one option. And they're designed for soccer, lacrosse, football, all those things. It's primarily soccer that uses it. So one option is to reinvest in these 4 fields, $3.5 million. Never be full park-like. This is another concept, which is up at Ulysses Park. And I think this is 10th Street. Bell Middle School's right here. You can see me moving. The skateboard park is up here. The VA place over here. So here's parking. This area right now has 2 baseball, softball fields on it. We have 2 more baseball, softball fields that are that size and then a small field. So there's 5 baseball, softball fields up there as we speak. We've looked at converting these into multi-use fields that could be done, soccer, lacrosse, football, all of those things. You can see we have this description with a couple of wider fields and then 4 small fields, which could also play up here. We could take 1 big field here if we wanted to, but honestly, the soccer folks primarily use smaller fields than the large fields. We would have to move a couple of light poles And we could reinstall then top quality lighting here because we aren't on a landfill. We're not going to have any subsidence settlement or anything like that we would. We get true park amenities. There is a restroom. There's a restroom building up there that's scheduled to be replaced and redone. And then there's a couple of vault toilets up there that come into play. It has site furnishings, benches, a trail around it, parking area that's paved. The parking area at Rooney is not paved because of the movement. So this is another option that we have that in the long run potentially makes a lot more sense, but it's about twice the cost. They're telling us right now to do something like this is like 7.3, something like that.
When does this take out the dog park there?
It does take out the little dog park that we have in this little
right off
corner.
the-
It's just a little corner right there.
What kind of public process needs to happen to make a change like this?
Well, I think we need to have some public process about it. We've gone out and had some conversations with the youth sports leagues that are impacted and affected by this, but we have not fully vetted it with them yet. I'm going to talk to City Council on July 12th about this and show them this. And if they have any appetite, then I think we'd start a full-blown public process. We obviously need more funding. That's a big deal.
What's driving the cost? It just seems, is it just because everything's more expensive?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I have real detailed information on this. I think most of you know we looked up north at some property up there and in combination, and that just financially for what we got, it didn't work out. But we've invested a lot of time and energy on this project, looking at alternatives. There's just not flat land in Golden that's open, right? And but one of the questions too that comes into play a little bit is just equity. You know, should we spend $7 million on primarily soccer or not? And how does that work within our system? Obviously, the soccer program's not going to be on it 24/7, but with lights, and with these would be synthetic turf also at Ulysses. The rest of the complex is natural grass. But for a variety of reasons, we think that we would get more use and better use out of these being synthetic turf. So I show you just to hear what your first impressions are and what questions or concerns come to mind initially. We're a long way from making decisions on this. Maybe not in time-wise, but there's a lot of process that we would have to get through to have this become a reality if it was to.
Doesn't the middle school have there's some sports fields there? Is there a chance that, the community could use the school fields and then the school could use these fields and do some sharing?
There's that possibility. Working with the school district amenities is really an interesting challenge here. Many years ago, we gave up some funding that we could have used for city improvements to Golden High School so they could put a synthetic turf field in there. And we thought that we would likely have use of it, but we really don't have use of it. Their tennis courts, they have really nice tennis courts that they've improved over off of Johnson Road, right off of here, and they keep them locked up. They don't give access to anybody to use those kinds of things. So it's an interesting waltz that we have. We do get to use the track at the high school a little bit historically, but we would love that. I mean, we would love that, and we could work towards that.
And so, what's the thought about losing the existing fields that are there? I mean, is there a demand for that? Is that just sort of based on numbers or based on sort of where folks are coming in for requests?
Yeah, there is a demand on it. We do have this local soccer organization that has used it for 15 years, and it's kind of been their base, if you would. It was designed to be regional. It's on county land. The county doesn't want to be in the recreation business, the sports business, so they worked with us to build the fields and to provide the scheduling of those fields for the various leagues and groups that use it.
You're talking about Rooney, right?
Right. And the fields are pretty much shot. We had some safety testing done, and they're right on its last life. I mean, they still meet the requirements, but they won't maybe through the year. They're that close.
So like, how much does this infringe on like the softball leagues up there?
So we would be taking 2 softball, baseball fields out here. And there is, if you look at the top right, there is some possibility of being able to do a baseball, softball field up there. On the synthetic turf, you can kind of see lines here. One of the elements that comes into play as we talk to our youth sports programs is most of them are parent-run, and their organizational and leadership structure changes frequently as their kids go through the program. And many of them do a really good job at administering their organizations, but they don't all do a really good job at trying to maximize use of fields, whether they're baseball or soccer or whatever. You'll have a coach that wants exclusive use of this area, and they really may not need, they may only need half of that area, but they're going to block it out because they want to make sure they've got what they need, right? And so we, on a yearly basis, work with these sports organizations to help try to maximize use of the fields, of the amenities. And sometimes it goes pretty good, and sometimes it doesn't. So, so to take 2 fields out, you will likely hear, and we've had preliminary discussions, you'll likely hear, oh man, that's, we're going to have a hard time getting our practices and games in and that kind of stuff. Our professional athletic staff think that we will be fine with this, especially with lights. It gives us a lot more flexibility, and especially with artificial turf, so that we don't have the problems that you do with natural grass if it rains, or if, the number of hours you can play on natural grass versus synthetic turf is dramatic in a year. I mean, it's significant. So we believe that we'll be able to accommodate everybody. It may not be exactly on the field that they want to be on, and it may not be as large as they think they need, but we think we can work through it and accommodate and have quality experience for the kids in the community. I mean, that's an important part to us, too.
I just have a question about the field sizes. The ones that are in Mooney Road, are they bigger field size?
They're about the same size as the 2, as the 2 big ones. And so this is a full-size field, and it's never used as a full-size field. They actually are running fields sideways on that.
Okay.
And we really think our primary responsibility is to be able to help the kids that are up to 12, 13 years old. And then those older kids, they really need schools and other places to help with the bigger areas that they like to play in.
What's the current status of the furthest north field there at Ulysses? That one seemed,
It's small.
and it seemed like it was really not used at all. I think my kids were having soccer practice there on the baseball field.
Right.
And it didn't look like anyone had used it as an actual baseball field
For a
in
long
quite some
time.
time.
Yeah. It hasn't been used a lot. And clearly, before we built Rooney, we were having some discussion on this week. Before we built Rooney, we had soccer on all of these baseball, softball fields. You turn them sideways in the outfield. We would remove a fence, an outfield fence. We'd literally take it out every year and open that up that way to be able to accommodate. They would play on some dirt infield area, which is not ideal, but it's certainly playable. and it's not uncommon, that happens at some places. And if we go down this road, get funding, and decide to do something, there probably will be a period of time where we need to put them on these baseball, softball fields in the outfield till we get something like this done.
Besides the playing surface, it's going to be a lot less windy too. Like, I don't know any parent that is excited to go to Rooney. And, you know, especially like in the fall, like it's windy and then it's cold. And I know people like transitioning, like we're at this stage right now, like should we stay with ice or should we go somewhere else? It's like, well, if we stay with ice, we have to play at Rooney, maybe we should go somewhere else. You know, it's really important driving factor in the decision making just from the conversations I've had. So like this seems great, but it probably wouldn't line up timing wise, but would it be worth considering this programming in the Bachman master planning?
I don't know. I think that,
And I'm by no means suggesting that we should put fields there for anyone that's listening to this, but, you know, just like we are going to be master planning that park, is that a need that can be fulfilled with kind of this, whatever it is? Because right now we don't know what it is, but we will have some kind of programming guidelines and study different options. Could this be something that's part of that?
I kind of doubt it.
It's kind of slow.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
just the topography?
yeah, topography's fairly radical there. I kind of doubt we'd get field space. If we do, it would definitely be a smaller, like Golden Heights or Southridge. It'd probably be about the size of something like that we could put in there, if at all.
Do you guys like, how long do you think they can still play at Rooney?
Maybe this year.
So this is an immediate thing that
Yeah.
we need to do, yeah. And the number at Rooney, the 3.5 million, that sounds familiar for like the last so many years. Did
This is
that get updated?
Yeah, these are pretty current. These are within the last month.
Okay.
And, but who knows? I mean, in today's climate, we could do much better, we might do worse. This, the 7.3 on this has a lot of contingency in it, so. Any other just thoughts or observations? I mean, it's really important to the soccer folks because they do have parents that are saying, I don't want to play with me anymore, the fields are trash. But then there's the challenge of convenience and are you really going to drive your kid a lot further to, you know, on a weekly basis for your practices and things like that? That's not fun. So they've been, the soccer group has been very patient in trying to get this solved. We've been working on this a long time.
And Tony Grams's, any opportunity there, especially just thinking about that dug-up area?
That dug-up area is about a quarter of what it is.
Yeah,
It is
not
really
enough
small.
space, okay.
So we do have 3 ball fields out there,
Mhm.
and we can put people in the outfields out there, same concept as here at Ulysses. That's something we could do, we could look at.
Is there any land, Tony Graham's, just like between the park and the road that we own?
We do own some open space out there. I don't know that will address all of the demands. I should look at that a little closer though, Craig. I should look at that. All right, anything else? I just wanted to get you in the loop and see if you had perspective that would, advisory perspective that would be helpful. So, thank you.
Yep. All right, I see we're running out of time here, so I won't go through any of the goals except for, does anyone, sounds like everyone attended the long opening. You guys have any comments of any sort regarding that?
It's great.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, really well done. Good attendance. It was just a really feel-good event.
Mhm.
I'm good.
Yeah.
My kids are loving it. They've been back 3 times now. So.
Yeah, I know one of the guys that lives immediately adjacent to the park, and he said it's been great as a gathering point for the neighborhood, because, right, before there was really no place for everyone to just show up and meet your neighbors, and now there is, and so it's just, yeah, very supportive of it.
Yeah, it was really well done, just with the walkway all the way around it. It's nice looking.
It's turned out nice.
Excellent. All right, any other updates on the lawn from your side, or are you good?
Not on the lawn.
All right, why don't we go into board and commissioner interface item, any items for tonight? All right, special interest topics? All right, director's report.
Real quick, we're kind of back on track with the open space master plan. We have worked with Great Ecology, which is the original company, and they are going to fulfill the contract for this process. They are using Ellie, one of the people that has gone on to the new company, Matrix, and Liz, who is there. She's still with Great Ecology, and she helped out a lot so far. So we're putting the finishing touches on a survey for the citizens to be able to have, and it will go out to coincide with a public meeting. I think the public meeting we're scheduling for July 11th, and we will at that time roll out the survey, get citizen input, leave the survey up for about a month, and then based on the public meeting and the information from the survey, the final document will be wrapped up, and they'll come to us here at PRAM, I think in maybe August, but probably September. And then after you folks get to take a peek and see what you think, give feedback, we'll take it to council for adoption. So that's sort of the time period. I think the survey is pretty much done. There are some questions that will help make sure that the definition is acceptable to the citizenry. I think we'll probably shoot the draft of the survey out to you folks and to the working group that have been working on it before the July 11th meeting, public meeting. So that's what's going on with the open space master plan. Questions or comments on that? Getting back on track, that's exciting. And the second thing is the special events committee. Diane Taberry, city staff is asking, they're trying to kind of recreate the special events review committee, and they want to try to get it done, get it put together by the end of this month. And they have somewhat of a new mandate from council that they have more responsibility and oversight in the evaluating and recommendations that are made to the event organizers. So they're hoping to do a morning meeting the last Wednesday of the month, June through October. And they want somebody from the board to be a part of this. I think not only this last Wednesday of the month meeting in the morning, but also to attend where they can the special events, so that they have firsthand insight of how they work out, what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. I think previously we had a couple of you kind of tag teaming that committee.
Yeah, I was doing most of it. Michelle did one, and I think I did a few, yeah.
So because it's a little bit different and the timing on it was a little bit different, when we got this information, we said, let's wait and just talk to the board and see what you guys think, as if there's someone that would be willing to do that, or if we need to tag team it still, or who it might be and what it would look like. So that's the ask from Diane Taberry and this group.
I could be the primary person there, and when I'm gone, I'll let somebody else fill in there.
The timing, I'm sure it's not great for me, but I could certainly do,
Yeah.
Once a month or once every other month or something like that. Plug in wherever you can't come.
That's an excuse to go to all those events and Have fun.
Research.
Yeah.
So, who should we put down? What do you,
I'll do it.
It's current on it,
with Clara's backup?
No.
Okay.
Anybody else?
All right, great, thank you so much. And then, any other report stuff? I talked about the fire mitigation stuff. We're almost finished with the ethnography from the museum. I think we're going to do something with City Council on July 12th to roll that out. I'm not sure exactly how that will look, but we're getting close to the end of that. And that's another piece for CIP, maybe doing another phase of something similar, having that maybe be in the mix. So we might ask for some funding there for the museum. I think those were the main things I had. I'll keep it short tonight.
Sounds good. Let's go on to board member comments. Mary, you wanna start?
Yeah, I think minor questions. Are we doing movies in the park this year?
I think so. I don't know for sure, but I believe so.
Okay, my kids want me to ask. And I haven't seen
Well,
anything about
I
it.
can find out for you.
Okay, and Stacy, at the park event, you introduced me to a new comms guy.
Oh, Phil.
Yeah,
Garcia.
Phil, is he doing the social media stuff?
He's doing the majority of it, I'll say.
I've noticed that it's taken a turn. It looks great.
Doesn't, he's
Very on
really,
point.
really good.
Yeah, something happened in the last week or so where it's
Since
a
he's
very
hired.
exciting feed. Yeah, so
And
kudos to
everybody
him.
in
Thank you for
Golden,
noticing.
Yeah, is happy that he's on board to help. So,
No, where did you notice it?
Social media while I'm scrolling. But no, yeah, City of Golden, Instagram and Facebook looks awesome this past week.
So we've hired a new person for social media that's in the communication department, not in Parks and Rec, but a sizable portion of their activity is dedicated to marketing for Parks and Rec. And Phil Garcia is the guy, he's a good guy, and not only does he have tons of social media experience, but he used to work for Denver Parks and Rec. So he has a Park and Rec background, which is really helpful for us.
Yeah, the Weed Buster posts,
Yeah.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're done. Just another plug for DeLong being our pesticide-free park, that I think they're short on volunteers, so I'm going to fill out my application myself. But encourage others to do so too. And then just a comment too, with the wildlife mitigation plan, will we have an opportunity before any action's taken just to see what's proposed to be done?
So I think, at least on the city's property side, we've got a lot of public process that we need to go through.
Okay.
There is a link to the plan that I'm happy to share with you all now, so you can see how the document's written.
Okay.
I know already that there are some groups of people, some HOAs, that are really concerned about removal of materials because of wildlife and other things. So I think that we're going to have to really surgically decide what we do and not do in all of the different areas. And it may be for us, for the city property in areas that we can't easily get to, that we give property owners X number of feet beyond their property line to do with as they see fit from the mitigation standpoint. That there might be some of that, but it could be problematic for us to say, okay, we're going to go in and do this, and then some of the neighbors are going, wait a minute. So it's going to be quite a process to
Okay.
get it all figured out. Do you want to see the plan?
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
I can try.
It's in there.
It's out there, I think, on Guiding Golden, but we'll get you a link directly.
Okay. Appreciate that. And you said June 29th was when the meeting
Yes,
was? Okay.
here, I think it's 6 o'clock.
Great. That's it for me.
I'm good for tonight.
Vernon?
And we didn't get Tom Swish's tour worked out, did we?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so that's all I got. Do you have something?
Well, you've all received an email from him. He'd be happy to,
Just a few people.
yeah, a few people here and there, even if it's a couple tours. So we'll put out another doodle poll and coordinate with him are you all still interested, or are there better days?
I was just
of the
going to
week?
say that, I mean, I think it's most important for basically Kermit and Michelle, because I think those are the only two folks on the board right now who haven't had the tour.
I haven't
so-
had the tour.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Yeah, I really want to go.
Yeah.
Oh, can I take that back?
Yes.
So-
Are there better days of the week that, when we're choosing dates, that would work?
Tuesdays and whatever day today is, Thursdays.
Would you want to do it in lieu of your study session in July? That,
That's the 7th. That's like 4th of July weekend, so
Okay.
I don't think anyone's around.
I saw Tom this morning, we talked about it briefly, and he's pretty flexible and happy to do whatever he can, even taking smaller numbers if you have to divide up because of other commitments.
I think,
So-
okay.
I was gonna say, it sounded like he said the sooner the better too.
Yeah.
It says things are drying out a
Yeah.
little bit.
Mhm.
It's not just brown up there.
Yeah, I can go during the day too.
I can do.
Well, I could do a daytime and an evening
Yeah.
poll, or a couple. I'll look at the 21st, 23rd, 28th, 30th.
Jackie?
Is it, I just wanted to say thank you for having the fountain in Heritage Dells fixed.
I
don't
asked
think
about
she
that,
did.
yes, and it had been turned off, but it was not broken.
Oh, wow, that was just somebody turned it off.
Well, they had turned it off, I think, for freeze conditions, and their starting it up is later than most people might think it needed to be. But they didn't fix it, they just turned it on. So,
Well, and now apparently there's 100 gallons of water that's leaking somewhere in Heritage, not from the fountain, in Heritage Dells. There were a group, two men there working in the corner of
Find the hole.
yeah, well, they were digging. And they were gonna dig a couple different places at the time. They were very nice. I was asked them what they were doing.
We don't need running
Kids
water.
No, you don't.
All right, I don't have any comments, so if, are you guys ready to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Yep.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay.